What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Cyber Defense Path, and you're going to see a pretty cool little session here today. You're going to see some internal tools that we use, not just red teamers, but pretty much everyone in IT uses these tools. So this is another step in our Cyber Defense Path. So if you guys are enjoying the path, please like, please subscribe. It helps out a ton. I'm telling you guys, you guys have no idea how much it helps. We're almost to 1,000. I'm super excited. All right, let's get into it. So what are sys tools, or sysinternals, excuse me. This is a tool compilation of over 70 Windows-based tools. So what it is it's a set or suite of tools that Mark Rusinovich, hopefully I said that right, might be Rusinovich, but developed them in the 90s, and basically Microsoft bought them, and now they use them, and you can download them and use them internally, or you can use them on their web case, which I'll show you here. But we're not going to do the web version just because this VM doesn't have a lot of power, so they already take a little while, and I don't want them to take any longer. Okay, so first couple of questions. When did Microsoft acquire them? 2006, and then I deployed the machine. I'm ready to go. Okay, so this is installing them. Now, you guys can follow this if you want to. Basically, you're going to download them and put them wherever you want, but I recommend putting them in the tools. So C tools, and you're going to see here, then this is something you're going to have to do here. So you're going to have to, you're going to have to go here once you have them downloaded, wherever you're putting them. And this is why I recommend you put them in tools, right? You got to go to advanced, you got to go to environment variables, and you have to edit the path. Now, if you guys don't know environment variables, the path, what happens is when you're calling on something in the command line, it's going to check, is it exist here? Does it exist in app data local Microsoft Windows apps? If it does, it's going to run it. This is also how you get some vulnerabilities, but then we added ctools sysint, okay? So that means when we go to run something, it's going to check secondary. Is it in ctools sysint? If it is in there, it's going to run it. So that's what the variable does. So now, instead of us running, like procmon or process monitor, we just have to do that, and that's it. And it's ran, right? Rather than before, we'd have to go to the file, which are all here, tools, sysint, and here's all the tools, and we'd have to actually click on it. But now we can run them all command line and give them different flags and things. Okay, so that's pretty much it. You guys can read how to actually install them. They're so easy to install. It's literally a download of a zip file and put them in the tools, and you're done. I mean, it's that easy. Okay, so I'm not going to read that to you. Yeah, you can. This is a good fun fact. You can also use it in PowerShell. You can download it to run internally in PowerShell. If you use PowerShell all the time, you can see here, if you use it command line, I'm still in PowerShell. That's what the PS stands for, and it works just fine. Okay, so what is the last tool listed in the tools? And it's alphabetical order. So if you just go down to the bottom, it's Zoom It, and there you go, Zoom It. Okay. Got that out of the way. Now, using Sysinternals live. We're not going to do this again because it was taking forever, and I didn't want to sit here and have this video be forever. Okay, so what you can do is you can actually set it up, and you can follow this guide, and you can run it from this live.sysinternals.com tools, okay? Now, what that means is you're going to call on the web to bring them in. Now, the reason I don't recommend doing this, I'll show you guys, is you do have to turn on your network discovery. You do have to turn on some features that I don't want to say make you vulnerable, because it's not necessarily they make you vulnerable, especially if you're in an internal network. But it's something that I would rather, if I don't have to do it, why would I, for one? For two, having them local is just, you want to use these tools as often as you can. And so, especially depending on if you're learning Windows, these are huge tools to learn Windows. If you're a sysad and you're trying to troubleshoot some stuff, if you're, whatever, you will use these a lot. If you're an analyst, you'll use these, and they give you an example at the end that I really like. So, whatever you're using them for, it's just nice to have them sitting there. So, what service needs to be enabled on the local host? That's the web client, and they walk you through that. It's pretty easy. Okay, so let's get right into the tools now. So, file and disk utilities. So this one's pretty cool. This is SigCheck, and you're going to see I'm going to run it right now. And the only reason I'm going to run it right now is because it does take a little bit, and then we'll talk about it. So you can see I'm putting in the path that I want, which is Windows and then System32. All right, so we'll let that run. Now, SigCheck, what does it do? It's checking for signatures on files. So you can see here, it can check for file status on VirusTotal. That's huge because if you guys know VirusTotal, you guys have used VirusTotal, you know it uploads, you can see here, a file scans against 40 antivirus engines. So what it does, it takes the signature of the files that you're giving it, which in this case, we gave it all of Windows System32, and it's going to verify those signatures are legit. Those are legitimate files from Microsoft or whoever, and they're verified, right? So why is that so important? Because if VirusTotal finds out that, hey, this one file is malicious, they have that on a database somewhere. Now, if they scan your computer, or if you scan it using this, the way we just did to verify signatures, and it finds the same signature that it found malicious earlier on any computer in the world that's been reported, guess what? You now are going to be, hey, heads up, this file is not verified. It has an unverified signature, and VirusTotal is marking it as malicious. So that tells you huge amounts of data, especially, you can see here, by the way, you're going to see this a lot, the accept EULA. That's just accept end user license agreement. You're going to see us put that, you're going to see them put that in a lot of their commands. And it's not a big deal. It's just accepting the license agreement so it doesn't pop up and say, do you accept this? That's the only reason. So now, here's a parameter usage. So if you guys see here, this is the help page with SigCheck or signature check, however you want to say it. So the help page will walk you through some of the flags. You can see there's a ton of them, but they'll walk you through it. And you can go through the page, and it's a help page. You can see it. But the ones we're using here is U and E. So U, if VirusTotal check is enabled, it shows files known or unknown by VirusTotal or have non-zero day detection. So it's just telling you, hey, if we find these files and we don't know what they are, we'll let you know that too. Otherwise, it only shows unsigned files, meaning files that came from not necessarily untrusted sources, but sources that you aren't familiar with or they're not familiar with. Then the TAC E, scan executable images only, regardless of their extension. So what's the point of this? Well, we didn't want to scan. This scan would take forever if you, especially on this box with no RAM. But if you ran it with scanning every single file, but you can run this on your own to verify, hey, do I have files that are unsigned, which means they may not be trustworthy, or do I just not know what they are? So you can do that, but it will take a long time. But if you have the RAM, it's not a big deal. All right, so this, you can see this is still taking forever. I'm just going to cancel it because it is taking forever. But you will end up basically getting no matching files were found. And when you get no matching files were found, that means, hey, it didn't find any files that were unsigned or unverified, nothing like that. Okay, so now we're into streams. So what most people don't know, and we covered this in a couple of the other boxes, I believe, is that there's ADS, alternate data streams. So when File Explorer is a big one that allows this. So when you download a file, when you're working on a file, whatever, they allow alternate data streams, meaning you're getting the file, but then there's this alternate data stream coming. And that alternate data stream is probably going on a different, totally unbeknown port to you. It's going to be, it comes on the same port sometimes. It just depends. But it's an alternate data stream, meaning it is not you're not going to see it, right? So this is used maliciously a lot, yes, but it's also used for good reasons too. So the example they use, and is a good example, is when you download a file from the internet, right? Well, there's an alternate data stream attached to that file that you're not going to notice, and you can see it right here. It says zone identifier, money sign data. That means it's from the internet. That is not an internal file. You didn't create it on that box. It came from somewhere on the internet. So that's important because that means when you're going and you're doing forensics or anything like that, you can say, hey, this person ran this file, and then all of a sudden their computer started messing up. Well, you can go back, you can look at that file and say, well, the file came from the internet. That's the first alarm, right? So that gives you a little red flag. So we'll go ahead and hit streams, and we'll say the accept EULA, and well, I put EULAS, but oh well. So you can see there's two different things you can do: recurse subdirectories, delete streams. Well, we don't want to delete them, that's for sure, because we want to actually keep them. So you can see since the file has the identifier, blah, 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 it has the additional measures. Now, one of the questions, there's a text file on the desktop named file.txt. So you can see that text file. There's an alternate data stream in there. We need to find it. That's what they say. So what's one of the things you can do? You can do the streams. Now, we are not in the correct directory, so we'll have to go users, admin, desktop, and then we'll have to do file. Okay, so this is the file. So we hit it, and you can see it's got ads.txt data. So ads.txt is the alternate data stream. Now, data means it came from the internet. So now if we run Notepad and we say file.txt, let's see. We can go ahead and open Notepad here. My dog's sleeping, he's barking. And then we can say file.txt, and then you can put the little colon to say alternative data stream.txt. I want to open that. I opened it backwards. All right, let's just see if it'll open Notepad without requiring it. There we go. Cannot find. That's because I'm in the wrong directory and I'm an idiot. Okay, so all we gotta do is C, and what was it? Users, and of course I have to type it out. Administrator, desktop, and then that should be file.txt. Okay, and you can see when you open it with Notepad, I am hiding in the stream. So there's your answer right there. I am hiding in the stream. So hopefully that made sense to you guys. This is an alternative data stream. It's almost similar. I don't want to call it this, but it's similar to metadata if you guys are familiar with metadata. It's alternate data that's coming in that can be used for whatever purpose they want it for, but it allows you to keep information that may be important to it, like the fact that it came from the internet. Okay, so that's how you look for that. Now, sdelete, this is pretty easy. Secure delete. This is, you can see it's DOD 52220. That's just Department of Defense. If you guys have ever worked for the government, you know DOD just is Department of Defense. But this is what it does. What happened? Okay, so you can see this is what it does. When you go to delete something, it'll write a 0 and verify it. So it actually deletes the file, writes over it. Then it writes a 1, verifies it. Then it writes a random character and verifies it. Now, why is this important? Well, this has been used in a lot of attacks because if I delete the logs, right, if you go and do forensics, you can go get them. If you do it this way, theoretically, you can not go get them. The reason I say theoretically is because time and time again, we see people delete stuff, even using methods like this, like secure delete, and forensic specialists are still able to pull and extract small amounts of data or large amounts of data. So what that tells us is we really don't know a 100% method. Well, we do, but we don't have the time for it, I guess, is what we can say. Number one, you can physically break the stuff into little bitty pieces and then it'll never get put back together. The other way is you could do this, 10,000 times and you'd pretty much verify that it's going to be gone. But it's not always that easy. So keep that in mind, but this is a good way to securely delete stuff and not have to worry, is it recoverable? All right, so TCP view. You guys should be fairly familiar with this because we've used Resource Monitor on this channel before, and Resource Monitor is it's going to tell you some information about it. Now, TCP view, we'll show you. The reason I'm not covering Resource Monitor very much is because we're going to cover TCP view. Now, this is just a little bit different, but this is a really good tool, especially if you're looking for, are you part of a botnet or something like that? Because what a botnet does is it reaches out, right? And it sends commands to a machine. So if you're worried that your machine might be taken over or might be part of a botnet, you use TCP view, and you can see every port that's open. It's kind of like NetStat. If you've used NetStat, you can see every port that's open, but then you can see, okay, this one's listening. These are all listening, but you can see these are listening on local port, okay? Now here, you can see this is an actual connection established. Now, if we scroll over, you see packets are being sent and received. Why is that important? Because that tells you right there, hey, heads up, something is talking to me right now on this port. Now, let's say this is remote address. Let's say you look at that and it's an IP that you don't recognize. Okay, now we need to start looking at who is to try and find out who owns that IP. So you can see here, using whois tool, what is the organization for the remote IP or the remote address in the screenshot above? Well, this is the remote address right here, the 52154.170.73. And then if we go here on the whois, you can see here, it's owned by Microsoft Corporation. Boom. So there's your answer, Microsoft Corporation. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. But basically, if you go on here and you start looking at your computer and you're like, I have a bunch of connections I don't realize, start doing a little research on them. Now, some of them will just be you accessing the internet daily, whatever, that's fine. But some of them could be malicious. Okay, so auto runs. This utility, which has the most comprehensive knowledge of auto starting locations. So what is this? It tells you where and what is auto starting on your computer. Okay, so we'll go ahead and auto runs. I'm not even going to accept it. We'll just let it go. Okay, so you can see there's going to be a lot of information here. Now, we don't see anything right now, and that's fine. But what you're going to see, it's going to load. It's just taking a while because this computer is very slow. If we go to image hijacks, this is a big one. Ooh, nothing's running though. Okay, so you can see we'll go back to everything. This is the stuff that's auto running. Okay, so that means it's going to be set to auto run. Now, there's a lot of different things going on here, so don't worry about stressing about knowing everything about it. The big thing here is the image hijacks for cyber defense path. This is basically, if you go here, this is a good source for you to read about it. But basically what it is, file execution options in the Windows registry to redirect a process loading by mapping the executable name, and that's loading a completely different process. So what is it? It's these processes are supposed to run auto run, right? And you could replace the name of this with a name, the same name, and it could hijack it, is what they call it. So what's that mean? It means you could replace the program that's going to run automatically and then therefore take over the machine. And obviously, just because they're sitting here doesn't make them vulnerable, but it's something to look into. Okay. Now we got process dump or proc dump. So if we hit proc dump or process dump, you can see it gives you a list of options. Boom, boom, boom. Pretty easy. You can go through and look at it. But what you can do is you can go back to Process Explorer. I think it's Proc Explorer. Yep. And I think we opened this at the very beginning. But this is the next one we're going to go to. So we'll go ahead and open it and show you. Okay, so this is Process Explorer. So what you can do, which is pretty cool, is let's say you have a program that you see the CPU's like just skyrocketing or something like this. You can go here and you can say create dump and create a mini dump or a full dump. And it gives you basically all the information about what's happening. So that way you can then give it to whoever's in charge of trying to figure out what's going on. So it gives you an option to figure out what's really going on in the back end. It's almost like giving them the logs, if you will, but you're giving them much more detailed information about step-by-step what's happening. Okay, so now we got Process Explorer. Okay, that's what we're in right now. So that should be pretty self-explanatory to you. All right. So this one tells you in the following images, let's look at servicehost.exe, PID 3636. So if you remember from the last box, the only PID that will stay consistent or process ID is number 4, and the rest of them will be randomly generated. So that 3636 won't be the same over here, so don't worry about trying to make it the same, or looking for it, I should say. I don't know why it keeps doing that. All right, this process should be associated with the web client service. Now, we did not create the web client service, so we won't have that sitting here. but what they're looking for is that web client service. And you can see here's the service, that the process that's running it, and here's what's actually being ran. So it's actually being ran right here by administrator, and here it is. That's what's actually being ran, and then there's the actual command. Okay, so why is that important? Because let's say this says service host.exe is running, right? And then you get over here and it's some weird command that reaches out and pulls down a reverse shell. To you, that might be, that's not normal, right? So that's why it's nice to go through these and look at them and try and figure it out. Now you can see here, ideally it would be wise to check. So what they're talking about is they're looking at the web client. So that's the process they set up to run these commands remotely. So when they look at it, they go through, you can see here, they're going to go through and they're looking at, now you can also see these are all verified, meaning that they're owned by whoever says that. They're verified. The signature is verified. It is the actual product, right? So you can see here, what the one they're talking about, if you look at it a little more closely, so let's say this one, if we double click it, you can see they're looking at the TCP IP is the next one they're looking at. And you can see it gives you a local address and a remote address. Well, what they're saying is you should verify this remote address is what it says it is. Now, we verified the program's correct, so that's half the battle. But you should verify that whatever it's connecting to, whoever it's talking to, is who they say they are. And you can see there's a lot of tools to verify authenticity of an IP, but you can see they use Talos, and Talos verifies, yes, the IP address does have a reverse DNS, and it's Microsoft Corporation. Perfect. So we verified it is Microsoft. It is connecting to a Microsoft server, so we know that is 100% legit. And then you can see here they give you the color code for what's going on here. The pink right here, the ones that we have here, is a service. Okay. The light blue is a process that's ran by the same account. So you can see it's ran by admin. So those will be light blue. Green is ones that have just started. So you'll see it pop up and then change colors sometimes. And then this like bluish color, I don't know what they're calling it. But it looks like it's something that was freshly spawned. But all right. So now let's go to Process Monitor. So that was Process Explorer. And I know I'm going through these fast, guys, but it gives you a lot of information. So you should be able to get through it. I want to make sure that you guys see it. So what we're going to do, you can see here, Process ID. Now, I did this earlier. I put a filter in. We'll hit OK. And you can see the current filter excludes all these. Now, we'll go ahead and hit the filter. We'll go back to, there we go. Okay, it popped up. So Process Monitor, I put this filter in for Process ID 516, which is the service host, okay? That's the only reason we have them, but you can see it's showing 1,000 of 111,000. So we're not capturing all of them because this would take forever. So that's what you want to find out. You want to look at a process and monitor that specific process and what it's doing. So let's say you have something that's a little suspicious, you're not really sure. So you notice we can go here, we can go to File, and we can actually stop the capture so that we can then take this and review it, because you're going to get thousands of thousands, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to go to your Process Explorer, find the process ID of whatever suspicious process you think might be suspicious or you're not really sure about, and then put the process ID in here as a filter. So I'll show you the filters. So we'll go ahead and filter. And you can see what I did is I said exclude. So those filters were already in. I didn't put those in. So what you can do is you can say include process ID. So right here, you go to PID 516. So if the process ID is 516, you include it. Then you put one in that says if the PID is not 516, then you exclude it. Now what that does is then say it'll only show us process ID 516. When that happens, here's what we're going to get. And now we can really start breaking down exactly what the process is doing and step-by-step timelines, everything. So you can really start figuring out what's going on and what that process is doing. This is especially good if you're trying to analyze malware and see what it's doing. This can help you with that. All right, so now PS exec. There we go. Okay, so this is a lightweight telnet replacement. So what's the difference? This lets you run basically have an actual interface. So most of you know telnet, when you run telnet and connect to something, you take over whatever command you're telnetting to, if that makes sense. So for instance, if you telnet to an FTP server, you now have to use FTP commands. This is different. PSExec actually has an interface that you can interact with, and you can even interact with console applications without having to manually install anything. Perfect. Okay, so you can see PSExec. We'll go ahead and just run this. And it gives you a bunch of different information. So it gives you a little help menu. That's awesome. All right, so now run auto runs. We did that. Okay, so on the auto runs, so we'll go ahead and run that again to show you the question, because the question is a little bit confusing, so I want to make sure everybody sees it and understands it. So if you run the auto runs, you'll see what they're saying is on here on the image hijacks tab, they only have one image or one entry, and it's this one. On ours, we will have more than one, but the one that's been updated, so you can see the one that's been updated is this task manager. And the reason it's been updated is because you can, if you remember, we added that C tools sysint in there. That was us. We added that. So once we added that, it updated this auto run because that's what's going to run every single time to verify. So now what entry was updated is taskmanager.exe was the update value, C tools sysint, and process explorer. So what it's going to do is it's going to run every time. Perfect. We got that. Okay, now we're through the kind of bulk of the knowledge, but here, sysmon, system monitoring, this is important because they want you to understand it, but they don't want to deep dive into this because it does take a very long time to understand sysmon. It's a whole tool by itself, but they want you to know it exists and understand that you can access it. So once installed in the system, it remains resident. So what that means is it's going to stay persistent the whole time, whether you reboot, whatever. And it's going to monitor and log system activities to the Windows event log. So it monitors a little bit more than what your normal logging would, and it kind of gives you alerts and stuff if you feed them into a SIEM. So by collecting events, it generates using Windows Event Collection or SIEM agents. Okay, so this is a comprehensive tool, and it can't be summarized. Perfect. So just understand it. Go to it at some point. At some point, we'll do the Sysmon room, so then you guys fully understand it. If you guys are interested in that, comment below that you want to see the Sysmon room, and I'll knock it out quickly. But I don't know how interesting that will be for some people because some people may not be there yet and have never used it. Okay, so WinObj, this one may be a little bit confusing to you guys, so I'm not expecting you guys to understand it completely, but just understand how to access it, how to use it if everyone ever needs to, okay? So you can see it's going to access and display information on the object manager's namespace, okay? And that's the official definition. So there's an important thing. If you guys have not followed the previous box, which is, and it'll tell us here, the core Windows processes, you need to go back and review that one to understand this process here, okay? So once we go through here, right? So here's our root directory, if you will. All right, so now you can see here, if we go to sessions, if you remember, 0 session is always the operating system, and 1 is the first person logged in. So if we go to 0 session and we go to DOS devices, this is what they're looking for. So you notice this is when you log in, it's just the directory global, right? You can see they have a Y here, and that's because they connected their Y drive to their live Sysinternals. We didn't do that, so we don't have one, right? So that's what they're showing you, is that you can access it here and actually see it. Now let's look at the Windows Station values for 1. So if we go back, this is session 0, so that's the operating system. If we go to 1, this is your session or the user session, and you go to Windows, you can see there's Windows Stations right there, and there's Windows Stay 0. Now, this is where it's important, because if you remember in the Windows Processes one, there's crss.exe. It launches with Windows login and should be running, right? So when you run it, here's how you can verify it. Nothing's wrong with it besides the commonalities that you look for in the past box that we looked at, which is like if there's multiple of them running and things like that. This is how you can also look. So when you go to the crss.exe and you look at the properties, you'll see it's going to be referring to this Windows Station Session 1, Windows Station WinStay 0. So you can see, you can verify this, what this says, the Windows object is Windows Station 0, and that's what it's referring to, and it's not referring to something else, which could be very bad. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. That one will require you guys to have done the core processes box that we just did, or else you won't really understand it. Now, this one I'll show you guys, but I don't think, unless you guys have ever worked in a government situation or something like that, you probably won't ever see this. But what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and say CPU. So if we wanted to, we could change this to whatever we want, right? So we'll say CPU is stuffy, right? And it doesn't really matter. OS version. And you can put whatever you want here. You can put 100 things. You can put 2 things. And we'll just say stuffy again. Okay. And then we'll file, save as, boom. Doesn't really matter what you save it as. Okay. So what this does, what a lot of people have never used this, is when you have this running, you basically what you're going to do is you can see apply, boom, and now all this information is sitting right here. So there you see CPU stuffy, OS version stuffy. You can have that say whatever you want, but that stays on the desktop no matter what, whether you change the desktop, whether you do or don't change something, whatever, and they have to actually run that BG info to change it. Now, why is this important? Because what it does, let's say you have 50 computers on a domain, right? But I have this running on all, I have this in the group policy that it runs. What it's going to do is it's going to pull, depending on what you have it set up, the default gateway. You don't just set that to just random whatever. It's going to pull that from the information on the computer. So what does that mean? So for instance, you can have it pull the OS version. It says, say, stuffy. It'll actually read what's on the OS version and tell you, hey, this is what it is. It can read the environment variables and tell you the DNS server is XYZ. You know, the host name is, and it's got the host name there. Now, it'll pull that information and set it up here. Now, why is that important? It's really not for typical day-to-day users, but a lot of government computers have this on the background, and the reason is so that if someone's working on it or something like that, it's a quick, boom, got it up. I've got the IP, the DNS, I've got everything I need to work, okay? So keep that in mind. This isn't common, but it's good to know because you can put background information on your computer. Let's say you want your company's information right here, the address, name, phone number, whatever, on your company, on every one of your company's laptops. This will do that for you. That way, every time someone logs in, you can't say, I don't know our address, I don't know, whatever. There's all kinds of reasons you could use that. Okay, reg jump. Now, we're not going to use this one here, but reg jump is very good because what it allows you to do is you can see if you actually put in the exact registry entry that you want, it will jump you straight to it. Now, the registry is way beyond the scope of this box, but the registry controls everything. The registry is your god, okay? So keep that in mind. But when you go to registry editor, if you've ever looked at it, it's very, there's a million tiers in it, right? So this allows you to jump straight to it and not have to try and dig around and find it. So it's really good. Now, strings is, if you ever used Linux, and you've probably used strings. So it's the same thing. So what we're going to show you here, it says run the strings tool on the zoom it.exe. What is the full path? So we're going to run strings, and then we're going to say on zoom int. Now, I will say, if you guys are just getting on the box, you notice I'm already in the tools Sysint directory. You will have to change to that directory. Now, you have to change the find string and to, and you're gonna, looks like .pdb. So what's this gonna do? It's gonna go through the file and it's gonna look at all strings and it's gonna pull them out. Then we have this pipe. The pipe is going to then say, take all the strings that we just got, feed it into this find string, and then that I believe is just case sensitive, and then look for PDB. My God. And boom, it gives us 2 of them. C agent work 112S, Windows 32 release, and it's the first one. Windows 32 release, boom, boom, boom. And I don't know if the other one will work. It probably will, but I don't know. So that's it, guys. We covered a lot of information. Now, this is something I wanted to cover with you guys real quick. The real world scenario. So this is telling you whether you're a desktop engineer, system analyst, or security engineer, no matter how much experience you have, these tools come in handy. Now, here's one. As a security engineer, I had to work with vendors to troubleshoot why an agent wasn't responding to an endpoint or on an endpoint. So they had an agent sitting there, meaning that's a program sitting on an endpoint, and it was not getting back, and they didn't know why. They couldn't figure it out. So they used Process Explorer to inspect the agent processes, its properties, and associated threads. So what is it doing? What's it trying to open? What's going on with it? Process Monitor to investigate if there's any indicators. So is it running high CPU and then crashing? Is it, is there no network connectivity? What's going on? Then proc dump. This creates a dump of the agent process to send to the vendor. So the vendor owns the software. So if you send the dump to the vendor, they should be able to look through it and say, oh, here's where it's going wrong because they coded it themselves. So that's a good example of a real world scenario where they use these tools and they were not low-level troubleshooters. They weren't help desk. They weren't sysads. They were a security engineer trying to figure out what's going on. So hopefully that helped you guys. This is a very informational box, but also allows you hands-on. I really like this box. These tools are invaluable. When I say invaluable, they are used on red teams, blue teams, purple teams. They're used everywhere. So keep in mind that this is a defensive path, but you can use these tools offensively as well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys, and hope you guys have a great day.